All right, welcome. Episode 15 of the Follow Up Pod. Today we have our first guest on, and it's another brother. It's Manning Price. He is one of our brothers, believe it or not. One of the things we wanted to do going into this new year was have guests on. Not to just have guests on to talk to them, but to have our guests bring a podcast, some type of content that they learn from and really like. And we thought it was a really cool way to get to know people is to have them share ways they learn or content they like and talk about it. So we're going to try this one with our first guest here. And he decided to go with the What is Money podcast. It's a podcast that has Michael Saylor on it. So we're getting into the Bitcoin realm, something that isn't new to this podcast. Welcome, Manning. Good to have you
Hey,
here.
yeah, I would like to say that Sterling showed me this podcast. He brought up a really good point. He's like, I wanted to see if Michael Saylor's ideas had changed 5 years ago from today and see where his mindset was at then. And when I gave it a listen, I'm like, I love talking about Bitcoin, MicroStrategy. I think this would be a cool topic that we could talk about. So I'm
Yeah,
excited.
that's another thing. So this podcast that we're doing was recorded in 2020. So it was like the beginning of Michael Saylor in the Bitcoin area. So it's pretty cool to see where they were 5 years ago and where we're at today. Um, and that's one thing. I don't think many of his ideas have changed in those 5 years. If anything, they've become more concrete.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I didn't love the podcast. I'll start with that for my rating. I had it like at a 38. I thought it was bad. But I'm glad I listened to it because like we're in the beginning of our podcast, so that's this guy's like first year of podcasting. I think it's probably Michael Saylor's first couple rounds of it too. You can kind of tell, because
We're
I
on
think he's
episode 58 now.
yeah, I think he's a really smart guy. He's obviously been right about Bitcoin, but he came off as like, when like the smart kid is scatterbrained and they just come off as like they don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Not like dumb, but like smart dumb.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he came off to me. And the big thing I got from it was, I want to make sure I'm concise when I talk, so I don't come off like this guy that is just rambling and lose his credibility. I think being concise over being kind of rambling is a huge difference in how you're perceived.
Sterling, that builds off of my review of this dialogue too, because my first thought was I didn't like this podcast that much, but I like the conversations that they're having. It's funny because this Robert Breedlove guy, he's a jocked up finance dude, and Michael Saylor, he's
Big old
this,
square jaw.
yeah, yeah, and he's one of the bros, right? Breedlove is.
Yeah.
And then Michael Saylor, this is this MIT aeronautical engineer nerd, right? And it's so funny because you can tell Robert at the beginning he's so excited to have him on, but towards the end you can tell he's so bored. He's like, yeah, okay. And he's just like this guy is just rambling on these crazy like theories and analogies, and then that led me to think that if Sterling was talking to this guy, Sterling and Michael Saylor would be getting in arguments about like I could
There'd
see
definitely
it.
be more of a conversation,
Yeah,
because it seemed like Robert was like, one, he couldn't get a word in.
yeah.
And then two, when he did, he'd immediately shift it to a different story, and there was no back and forth. It was all just like,
Yeah.
here's this platform, go ramble.
Yep. Totally.
But so it's an interesting like timeline, because it's November of 2020. So they had just had 8 months of the pandemic and saw what that did to the stock market. And 3 months before that, in August, is when MicroStrategy first changed their strategy. They were a normal hedge fund, and he made his first big move in, I think, 08. That's how long MicroStrategies. Yeah, since they made a lot of their money back in 08, in the 2000s, really, and then they were super flat. They weren't this rock star hedge fund. And in August, 3 months before this podcast, is when he pivoted. He didn't pivot fully at this time, but most of it he moved to Bitcoin. And it's in 2020, this was right before a huge run up. So like he nailed this one.
Wait, did you say that MicroStrategies was a hedge fund?
Yeah, they're a software
Yeah,
solution.
they're a SaaS company.
They implement software for businesses.
Okay.
So Michael Saylor, he created that company along with a few others as a software engineering company.
Yeah, like Bitcoin is like, maybe Manny can talk to this, but he kind of did what Tesla did, where they put in their company, they put their company accounts in Bitcoin as stores of value.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what he did. So MicroStrategies, it's a software as a service company, right? And that was their whole business model. They weren't too successful. I think they bring in revenue yearly about around like $200 million, like nothing crazy, right? And this is one of the craziest facts about this whole company right here is that Michael Saylor single-handedly convinced his entire company to go all in on Bitcoin. Like, he convinced a SaaS company, to pretty much give up on their software development to go all in on Bitcoin. Like, that just is astonishing to me.
Yeah, that's a huge pivot.
Well, they still are doing their software. They're still doing their core company stuff. This is just like their accounts for the company that's getting invested in Bitcoin, right? Like,
but I mean, that's a drop in the bucket when you look at the value of MicroStrategy right now.
Yeah.
Like to call it a SaaS company as it sits today is wrong.
Yeah. And that was everything about them getting in the NASDAQ 100. They're like, it's only for like technical companies. No financial companies can be in the NASDAQ 100. So when they got included in the NASDAQ 100, everybody was like, they're not like a software company anymore. They're a financial investing company, but technically they're not on paper, even though like 99.99% of their assets are invested into financial means like Bitcoin. But
so before we get too far into the MicroStrategies, I want to give my 2 cents on my thought at a high level before we get into it.
Yeah.
So I'm on the other side. I enjoyed it. So one thing, this podcast isn't for someone who's wanting to learn the technical side of Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? This series, the first 3 episodes of the What is Money series, is like not even related to Bitcoin. It's like foundational, conceptual, abstracted theories and knowledge about how humans have harnessed energy, power. And it's like very abstracted. It's very like theoretical. And episodes 4 and 5 start to get into like what they call Bitcoin theory and the digital age. So if you are wanting to listen about like what is Bitcoin, this isn't the podcast for you. If you want to know what role Bitcoin plays in our economy and world and the theoretical idea of why it could succeed, this is for you. And you have to listen through all 5 episodes. I got all the way through 4 and was halfway through 5 because I liked it. One thing I appreciated is I have learned in my field. Whoa. I've learned in my field that being able to like conceptualize information, like abstract information into these bigger ideas is very difficult. And you're not always going to be, there isn't always like even a 100% correct answer, right? It's relative to how you see it and the lens you look at it. So I really appreciated that he could go through a timeline all the way from the Stone Age, Iron Age, Dark Age, Steel and Industrial Age, all the way to what he's calling the Bitcoin Age, and abstract this huge plan, huge, like, what happened, like how did he tells the story of like humans through the lens of harnessing energy or power. And
Let
it
me
was
ask
just,
you. Let me
yeah.
ask you a question on that. Did that extra? Did him illustrating to you that he thought it in this different lens make you feel more confident about his decision to buy Bitcoin? Like, did it increase the probability that you would buy MicroStrategy stock?
I do.
I don't know. I think I'd still be on the. I don't think this would move me in a direction either way because so one, like you get the positive reaction of oh like he has like this deep understanding, but on the other end of that, it's like I don't know if you can really call it an understanding. It's more his perspective, and I would be more worried that because he has this such a deep like his own personal understanding of the role Bitcoin plays, like is he like is he biased to his own thoughts because he's so far down this rabbit hole? I would be a little worried about that. Um, because that's kind of what it is, right? It's this rabbit hole that he's so far invested into Bitcoin because he's went into this deep dive of conceptually like the role it plays in our world and economy, that he could really be that could skew his decision making. I I don't necessarily understand. I would rather invest in Bitcoin and not in MicroStrategies. I think, from what I understand, because it's like leveraged and it's more of a risk. Um, I don't know how much more I could talk to that, but I'm
Danny, what
not
do you think? What do you
invested
think
hard.
that his like understanding of history makes you more confident in his bet for Bitcoin today?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the guy's a genius. He may be a nerd, but he's a genius, and the pieces of the puzzle that he's putting together, I think, really show the point of view that hey, the world's going to change. We're not going to stay on this same financial system forever, right? And whether that's Bitcoin or something else, we're evolving, right, and adapting. And his ability to explain how he sees that happening, I think, makes me even more confident in his company because I'm like, wow, this guy, he really has a direct path he's going down, and he's committed to it.
I would like to see someone like your perspective, Sterling, and maybe ask more questions about the the content he covers in these 5 episodes. Because I would assume that he has some pretty cool answers to any criticism anyone would have, and that would be cool to if there would have been a little bit more criticism provided, because he did just ramble himself, and kind of went his own path when he was talking about it.
Yeah, I'm a big Saylor fan, and the first time I heard him, I don't even remember where, but the first time I heard him talking about like store value and Bitcoin's value being in really a store of energy, transfer of energy and labor, I really like those ideas. That really clicked with me. But this podcast, if my only experience with him would have been from this podcast, having gone to a very nerdy school, there's these people that ramble and have all these facts and they think they can connect beaver dams to Bitcoin. That immediately, like, I'm programmed to be like, okay, this guy wants me to think he's smart. I don't know necessarily whether he is smart. And a lot of times those people don't make things happen. Now, I don't think Saylor's that way. And we've seen it, right? There's evidence of it. 4 years later, he was right. And he was able to mobilize, transform a company, and go make a ton of money. So I'm not saying that perception would have been the correct one, but it would have been what I left this podcast for.
I will say too. I mean, the first episode you don't get that connection of the beaver dam to Bitcoin, and that's why like it is this I listened to this as a book. It was like you had the prologue of the book, and the 1 through 3 was the prologue. It
Yeah.
didn't get into like any of the points that the book was supposed to be about. It was like foundational knowledge to get to the point. Um, so I think if you were to want to listen to this, I would plan on having time to listen to at least through 5.
And we should say it's like 11 hours long.
That's crazy. I listened about 11 hours.
Yeah.
I think there's a few important things you can take out of that, though, is when he explains that there's no fair fights, for one, and there's always a better, faster, cheaper way of doing things. Those are the two key connections I got to Bitcoin out of this podcast. Do you guys agree?
I didn't like the no fair fights thing. I didn't think it applied to Bitcoin.
Well, it's not a fair fight in comparison to the US dollar.
So like if I go back to that time in 2020, because this is when the conversation really started about Bitcoin, right? Remember you got the lockdowns. This is when I put in, I think we all put in money around 2020, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For the first time. Like this is the first time the public said crypto's interesting and everyone was picking their favorite, right? Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember so I took a little portion of my savings and put it in there. It was funny. I was conflicted. I believed in it. Saylor was a big reason I believed in it. But at the same time, it was like he said it's not a fair fight. It was the other way. The dollar had the advantage of not fighting fair. The dollar was supported by the government that could blackball this, that could make it illegitimate, that could have the SEC go after it. It was a weird analogy. It didn't quite land for me.
Yeah, I mean, with the government controlling it, that's the only thing that gives the US dollar the upper hand. But I mean, how much longer is that going to work with looking who's coming into office and how things are changing? I mean,
agreed. And it's
His
exciting,
point
right?
was that Bitcoin has the upper hand because it's advantages. So over time, it's going to win because it has more advantages.
yeah, I mean, you guys listened to the All In podcast on the New Year's, and you heard Chamath explain that 3% Visa charge on every transaction would go away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge number.
Yeah. No, I get it. It's just like, I don't know. He said it like 40 times. And I don't think it was like this slam dunk quote that he thought it was. I don't know. I'm not saying it's wrong.
See, this is what I was saying. You and Saylor would be getting into arguments.
Yeah, let's have Saylor on.
I would love to have Saylor on.
Oh, yeah. Let's get him on here.
Could you imagine? That'd be sick.
That would
One
be
day.
cool. So like I went back and looked. You guys want to guess what the price of Bitcoin was at the time of this episode? It's 4 years ago.
It would have been like 30, or it would have been like 27, or 27.
It was 11K.
Dang.
11.7K. So it's 10x since then, 9x, right?
That's crazy.
In 10 years. Like he nailed it, man. He nailed it.
And I like the quote that he said in here. He said that there are decades when nothing happens and weeks where decades happen. I love that quote.
I like that one.
That was a good one.
I like that one a lot.
We can relate to that in our aviation industry, man. Like,
yep, that's true. So we were talking about a little bit like how his theory is with the fair comment is that the Bitcoin eventually overtake the dollar. And I think it will too. One of the things I want to talk to you guys about is like, what do you think that time period is going to be like? Because I think it will be gradual then sudden, kind of like the quote Manning just said, where the Bitcoin slowly catches up to the dollar, and then all of a sudden people realize, no, Bitcoin is the future, and all this money switches from the dollar to Bitcoin. You can just see like a mad rush and you don't want to be the last one in or the last one out of the dollar. And how crazy that timeline is going to be. Like, we're going to see that soon.
Yeah. I think the one variable there is, so he explains that Bitcoin is that store of value, right? And he even said, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what everything is going to be transacted in. Like, it's stuff being built off of it. So I think that's interesting how that plays out. But in terms of it all happening at once, I think it's going to be the scenario. I would bet it's Bitcoin too.
And to build off of that, Sterling, I think that the way some of these economists have explained is that we're going to start off with stable coins, kind of experiment around with the transactions first before we go fully to Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah. So I guess my point isn't when, but when it does happen, right? It could be in 10 years, right? We could ride the stablecoin lanes for a while, but there will eventually come a time when I think a large group of the population will realize roughly at the same time that the popular thing, the most common thing shifts from the dollar to Bitcoin. And that shift is going to be massive. I bet it breaks some things.
Yeah.
But we'll see it. Like when we talk about decades happening in a matter of
That would be
moments,
obvious.
Yeah.
that will be a huge moment in our lives.
Yeah. I like to compare it to the internet. When the internet first came around, all these traditional companies, they didn't want to have their web page. They didn't want to use the internet because they thought it was for, the black market and, porn. So they're like, we don't want the internet. We don't want to market and use it. And then eventually, like, they got behind and they had to adopt the internet model.
And I remember the one thing David Tracy ever told me about Bitcoin was, because even he got caught up in a Bitcoin conversation back in 2021, where he's like, "Oh, that's for thieves to launder their money and to do illegal things."
Yeah,
and it's funny that is one of the parallels to the internet, because I remember the internet conversations. It's all the dark web; they just do illegal stuff there.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're just kind of exploiting the pros of it, right?
Right.
They're the first ones. They don't have a liability, so they can be the ones to test it out.
Right. They have a high risk profile. The porn was the industry that adopted DVDs and Blu-rays first, right? I wonder if there's a mutual fund we could make where it goes and sees what all the shady people, what technology they're using, and just bets on that technology.
Genius. Let's
Speaking
start
of,
one.
the DOJ just got approved last week to sell their 69,000 Bitcoin they seized from the Silk Road darknet thing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting, and I think clearly political. But
so before we go on to like the MicroStrategy Bitcoin topic, one last thing I wanted to bring up on this podcast was the naval aircraft carrier example. Did you guys hear that part?
I didn't get to that one. Let me hear it.
So he was explaining that there's a captain on a naval aircraft carrier, right? And it's the most important job in the world, or in the Navy world, because they have nuclear weapons that are armed on these ships, and they can pretty much determine whether a next war started or not, right? So he's saying he was surprised because this captain, they're younger men, and they're only captains for, I think he said, 32 months at a time.
It was like 18 months.
18 months at a time. So a very short period of time. And he's like, he draws the parallel. He's like, for one of the most important jobs in the world, these guys are young and they're only working at this position for 18 months. He's like, that shows how important giving people opportunity is. That's why they do it, is so they have that next one up state of mind, and they instill it into all their cadets, and that's what motivates them, right? Yeah, he draws a parallel to Bitcoin, saying like next opportunity, you need to have opportunity for growth and stuff. But I loved it how he kind of drew conclusions to that naval captain and opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I must have missed
Good.
that at the end of the first episode. I gotta be honest, at the last
That was in
like
the third.
50 minutes, I turned it off and went to the episode 4 where they actually talked about Bitcoin.
How far did you get through four?
um, about an hour in.
So I guess one thing on Manning's thoughts there. So just to give you a picture of how the three first episodes developed, they started talking about naval carriers, and how they got to that topic was they were talking about how humans harness energy, right? So it started off with them like being able to throw missiles, as in like any long range combat, and then he said the next thing was they developed on water. Whoever controlled the waters won, and because the waters were least resistant, it's easier to move in water than it is on land, and so waters were least resistant. So he kind of gets into like it's power that it's harnessing power in the least resistant modem, and then he goes, the next thing after water was air. It was these naval carriers that could hold airplanes, and then they were the most dominant forces because they could strike from the air and use gravity, and it's less resistant than water. And then he kind of through some other connections, he got to Bitcoin, and he's like, the internet is the next. It's the more less resistant modem to control, and so he connects all these things that are very hard to connect, and so that's what you get through the first three episodes, is his connection of that. Whether it's right or wrong, it's his point of view. I thought it was really cool to listen to, but I just wanted to kind of give a picture of what to expect in those first three episodes.
Yeah, I don't want to paint the picture that like I totally dismiss it. I just thought, man, you're just rambling about fire and water. I like his ideas of resistance, right? And
It's
the
kind of
path of
like
least resistance
it's
will
what you
win.
would expect out of a late night talk with a bunch of nerds, but it's a little bit more consolidated than what you get in a late night talk. Like he doesn't have resistance of a discussion. That's a pro of no one really questioning him, is because he can get through his thoughts, right? And so you can really observe on your own whether you agree or disagree. But I enjoy stories, and he portrayed that whole timeline as kind of a story of how humans harnessed power and energy. So, yeah.
No, I mean I really like the resistance theme. I I don't need all the examples, but the the resistance in I like how he thinks about a store value, right? Store value is very important, and I think it's the key point to Bitcoin. Um, but he takes it one step further, which he's the only one I've heard talk about this. It's not just the store value, but how you utilize that store value, the transfer of that store value. You can take it across the world instantly, safely, securely. All those things are the big ways Bitcoin's better than fiat, right? You don't have the 3% Visa charge. You don't have the um, government limiting what you can do and can't do. So I'm all aboard that conversation.
So another thing he mentioned was like store value. Like my first thing that I've always thought about is like, well, if you're not going to invest in Bitcoin, like invest in land, like it's a good investment. And he explained like, well, you have 6% realtor charges, that sucks, and the property tax each year and the sales tax, like it's ways that you're losing that store value, right? It's percentage decreases, something you
Right.
wouldn't have in Bitcoin, which
Right.
yes, that makes sense. And then all these wildfires happened in LA, and you're like, well, yeah, there is even more risk on top of that.
There's always
And
black swan risk.
yeah, so I was
Yeah.
like, it kind of, for us listening to this, and I listened to that part of the episode, and then all these fires happened in LA. It's like, ooh, yeah, it would be really nice to be able to store value somewhere that you know is never going to lose its value. You know? So
Right, but eventually you have to spend it, right? Right, you want to
yeah,
store it so you can use it. And that's the thing about housing that I love is it is a great asset that you use, right? You use the
yeah.
most. You can't breathe Bitcoin. You can't raise your kids in
Some
Bitcoin.
people breathe Bitcoin.
But that's where those analogies, break for me.
Yeah, call me. I remember. I want to go back
Banks
to what
likes
you
what I'm
said.
saying.
I agree. I want to go back to where you said you would rather invest in Bitcoin than MicroStrategies. There's a reason why people invest in MicroStrategies instead of Bitcoin. And that's because MicroStrategies is an alternative way to gain exposure to Bitcoin, because there's a lot of financial institutions and people in positions with companies that they cannot invest in Bitcoin or Bitcoin ETFs. So MicroStrategies is their direct exposure to Bitcoin products, right?
I also like the fact that I get there's benefits to having your own Bitcoin wallet and your access to it, and that gives you all the freedoms that come with cryptocurrencies, right? But that benefit is not worth it to me. I just have, Bitcoin IOUs in PayPal, which I don't completely trust, but it
Yeah.
was easy and I could put my money in there without having to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what MicroStrategies is. It's like a stock that you can just throw your 401k into.
Right. And additionally, I mean, if they just approved Bitcoin for trading options on it, like I think about 4 or 5 months ago. Before that, you could options trade Bitcoin, but do it through MicroStrategies. So that's it. That's also what made it really attractive
Yeah.
too, right? And now I don't know if you guys are aware, but the fair accounting that they passed at the beginning of the year,
Mm-hmm.
fair value accounting, that's what it's called. It's to where they can report their holdings in Bitcoin on their balance sheets, right?
Mm.
So previously, the companies could only report their losses.
That's just
And
at its current market value.
yes, so now currently looking at MicroStrategies as of January 6th, they have almost $18 billion in unrealized gains that they can put on their balance sheets, whereas they've never been able to do this in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, this company owns 447 Bitcoin share, 447,000 Bitcoin shares at the average price of $62,000 a share.
Wow.
So on that, we said Bitcoin 10x since this pod or 9x since this podcast. You guys know what MSTR has done since this podcast?
Oh, geez. Triple that.
Um,
I know what it is, so you know to look it up.
went from like $20 to $300.
Yep, 17x.
Jeez.
So, are you guys familiar with the infamous money glitch?
And is that a GTA cheat code?
This is the Michael Saylor cheat code.
Okay.
Okay. So, Michael Saylor, he's selling shares of stock, and he's taking that money, putting it into Bitcoin, raising the value of Bitcoin, therefore raising the value of his company, and then issuing more shares of stock and just doing it on repeat.
Yeah.
And they call it,
And all the money he's borrowing is at close to 0%.
yeah, it's insane, and it's never been
That's
done before.
infinite's the wrong word though. It doesn't go forever. It only works as long as Bitcoin's increasing in value.
Right, but that's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of negative outlook on this company, because there's tons of it. It's primarily because he figured out a way to invest that these traditional financial guys couldn't think of on their own.
That's a great example of haters,
I think
right?
that's what it is.
Those are haters, and you can only have haters if you're winning. and he's winning right now. He
Well,
was
he's just
right.
being
They were
so
wrong.
disruptive to how these people have worked for their
Right.
whole life. It's like saying you're wrong.
What was
Yeah.
that stat we had, Conley, on the earlier podcast where like the financial sector is worth like 17% of the global economy?
Yeah, it was something crazy
And
like
this
that.
could take it down to near nothing.
It was like, yeah, it was. I think it was at 20%. It was like 22% of
Like if
our
crypto
world
fulfills its
economy is like finance.
Yeah. So if crypto fulfills its promise, that goes near to zero.
Well, so I see it through the lens of software has always cut out a middleman. That's what it's always done. It's Uber took it out the middleman of taxi companies. Like it's just like at its very base, it's trying to take out a middleman to lower cost, and this is what crypto does.
And all
At
those
its core.
middlemen are the people mad at Saylor for
Yes, it like
32xing micro.
So I've heard this is something, and this was one of my predictions this year was we're going to see more implementations of real world, decentralized like companies. So like I hear a lot like, oh, it's going to be the new crypto bank. I don't understand that because I see the new banks being the people, being decentralized networks of people. So if I want to store my money in my savings, instead of the bank using my money, when I can choose an account that acts like a bank and loans out money to get higher interest return on storing my money there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny because one of my friends at work told his financial advisor at Edward Jones that he wanted to buy 10 shares of MicroStrategies about 2 months ago. And she told him, she said, we will not let you invest in MicroStrategies. It's a fraudulent company. And he got so mad at her, he went to Stifel, the other broker here in St. Louis. And he was also a skeptic, but he's like, yeah, man, I'll do it for you if you want to do it. Like, but it's so crazy to me that like this woman at Edward Jones, she can tell you no. Like it's your money, but she can tell you no.
They're so set in stone,
It's
and
crazy.
they're going to be the first ones to go.
It's crazy.
Well, me and my wife were talking to Edwards Jones, financial advisor, because we have some money in there, and I asked him like, what were the expected returns, and he said basically after their cut, it was like 5 to 7%. So my wife, I was like, we could just put it in the S&P 500, and we get that return, and they're gonna skim off 1 to 2% each year. It's like I don't see how they succeed moving. I mean, like they succeed because people don't want any risk, and they believe that that is the least risky investment they can make. And I don't think you're really out. You might be sticking with inflation at that point. That might be what they guarantee you. Like genuinely, is we can we can stay up to date with inflation. But man, after like having those discussions and hearing your story of your friend, it's like I would not be betting on them.
You know what it is, Conley? A majority of the population, they think that these financial advisors know something that we don't because they're professionals. That's what it is. And it's that comfort.
Same thread we see with people taking account of their health is they don't think that they are capable of learning how they should treat their health. You know, it's like they don't think they can ask those questions. Same with finance. There's probably other realms, other areas that it's the same scenario.
I would love to hear
the doctor saying you can't have ivermectin.
Yeah.
Right, you got to take the jab.
The doctor saying your diet doesn't affect your chances of cancer or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, diabetes.
Sterling, what do you think about financial advisors?
I think you got to go deep into that rabbit hole. I think the government wants you to have 401k so they can, like, if you go all the way back, right? Why does everyone put all their savings into the markets, right? Because the government is printing money. Because the government is printing money, you're inflating your assets. So if you don't, you're losing your money every day. So you have to go gamble it on the stock market, right? To which all their buddies that contribute to their campaigns lobby for, right? Because they're the middlemen at Edward Jones taking that 1% for free, right? When a computer algorithm does all their trading. We all know that. It's the same algorithm we have access to too. It's the same as the S&P 500. It's the same as any mutual fund. So I think it's all a result of getting away from free market and free market capitalism. It's all these symptoms.
I got two thoughts on that. So one, when you asked Sterling how he feels about financial advisor, I would bet it's the same way he feels about health advisors, doctors. We we would love to have a doctor that could give us our blood tests, could really tell us what we need to hear, instead of like throwing on these, like, preventing symptoms, like I would love to have a financial advisor that could tell me like what percent I should be in Bitcoin, and want me to have financial freedom. And then the other thing is, I think companies really like 401ks because they guarantee you're working at that company for the next 20 to 30 years. You're not making big gains in your savings. You're not making money outside of your work. You're really sticking with inflation, and you're guaranteed to have to wait till you're 60 to use that 401k. So that's why companies love it. They want you to keep doing that if you're working for them.
Well, what's funny is that I just went to merge my Boeing and my Northrop 401k like last week. And I was always told I should have done the research on my own, but I was always told that 2 years and you were matched, right? And when I called Fidelity, they said Northrop's taking back their half of the money, and I was like, oh, I thought it was a 2 year match guaranteed, and they're like, nope, you weren't there long enough. They're taking it back. So when I hear that, I'm like, they were making money off of my compounded interest. I made Northrop money off of my 401k,
Yeah.
which is crazy because they're pretty much loaning me money in my 401k account that I'm matching. So it's accumulating more compounded interest, which they're making money off of if they get it back. You know what I'm saying?
Essentially, it's not matched until you're vested. It's their money
Exactly.
that they're investing until you hit a certain point. But in your
Exactly.
401k account, it looks like it's yours, just sitting there. They tell you this is what you got compensated. Yeah, that I didn't know there was strings tied to those.
I know I'm 5 years till vested where I'm at
Yeah.
now, but kind of additionally on that, this is more so. Sterling has to
What
take.
was the limit at Northrop, Manning?
I thought it was 2 years. That's what everyone told me. And
What did they tell you what it is?
Fidelity couldn't tell me what it is. No, they didn't know.
Oh, okay. I need to figure that out.
Yeah, it might be.
I wish that they would just, instead of matching me, they'd give me that money and I can invest it where I want. Like how Sterling would rather just have his money that they're paying towards his health care,
Yeah,
to invest it in his own health insurance or
yeah.
health
That's
care.
one of the things. Like when you
I
get
would
into
rather have that for
management,
finance.
yeah, you see the rates we pay people. Like my engineers make on average. I can't say the actual number. Let's pretend, right? If you do the math, let's since I can't say it out loud. Let's say, Manning, you make $1 every 2 hours. When your boss goes to budget for you, he has to assume you get paid $1 an hour because of all the overhead they slap on top of it, all your bonus package, your insurance, all that stuff, all those perks of the salary. And you see that dollar amount and it's staggering, right? You think you're making $60 an hour. The company's paying $135 an hour for you, right? So where's all that money going? Some of it's overhead, but a lot of it's your perks.
Yep.
And if you just got paid that straight up like a contractor, I think you could do more good with that money than they're doing.
Yeah.
That's not an option.
To me, it seems like they don't trust you they don't trust their workers to invest in a retirement, so they're forcing you to. They don't trust you to do your own health insurance, so they're forcing you.
I I disagree. I think they're in it with the insurance companies, right? And they get this big discount. They get to say they're giving you what's equivalent to this awesome package, but they get a huge discount from them, and then the insurance company gets their cut, right? I think it's all that crap.
Yeah, it's a mess, man. It's a mess.
There's a lot of middlemen, and I like I like imagining a future with less of them. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, do you see stuff like health insurance going to decentralized like communities? Like, is that a potential area where instead of a company, you're in a decentralized network for health insurance?
I don't know. I think that's a whole
You
other.
can,
The insurance conversation is its own thing, right? Like,
because that's
if
basically
you've
what
been
insurance
listening to,
is, right? It's a bunch of people investing in a pool, and if you need to
yeah,
take out of it, you can. But there's a company making money on top of that. So if you
right.
can take that company out, and then you can invest in this pool of only the people in case you need it. Like I see that being an application of if that's something you want to invest in, like that would be a better option than a company that skims money off that.
It's pretty
Yeah,
much.
you could see some crowdfunding insurance.
Mhm.
It's my problem with insurance is it's forced gambling.
Mm.
The casino, the house makes 2% on the slot pulls, right? We all know that. The insurance company is mandated by the government to make a certain percentage, right? But they force you to go get those insurances. Like you can't live life without insurance right now. It's not possible. You can't fight. You can't get health care. You can't buy a home. You can't do a million different things. You can't drive, right? These are all governmentally forced. So they're forcing you to go get those bad odds at the casino. Then that's what insurance is. Think about it. If you give them $1, they're going to give you back 98 cents. But it's even worse than that. Their profit's higher. And if you're a healthy individual, you get even less of that back.
Yeah, I
It,
mean you're guaranteed a loss on your investment because they have to make a profit, right?
right. That's best case is you just lose the profit. Worst case is you go your whole life without a major health incident. You never make your money back, and then they cut you when you're 60 years old because you're past a risk profile. Right? I wish there was an app that tracked how much you pay to insurance over time and how much they gave you back. If people saw that every day, I put in $400, $500 a month to insurance, but it's taken out of my paycheck. So I never see it. I never pay it. $400, $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year. I've been working for 17 years. I mean, we're talking $70,000 for health insurance. How much do you think I've gotten in return? Haven't had
Or
any major surgeries. Like,
I mean, isn't it like 20 grand for having a kid?
well, that's the price associated with it, but it shouldn't be 20 grand.
Yeah,
What's
Yeah.
20 grand about it?
yeah. I think that's more the where you're saying like how it's set up now is you're forced to have insurance because those prices are so artificially high.
Right. Because of insurances.
PBMs, bring in Brigham Bueller. Manning, is there any direction you want to go with micro strategies here?
Um, Other than trying to convince you to invest into the company, Conley, no, there's none.
Do you like it more than just having Bitcoin?
I think that I think you'll probably make more money on MicroStrategies over the next 10 years than Bitcoin.
Because it's
Will it be
because it's
more
leveraged.
will it be more nerve-wracking? Yes. It's like a roller skate. It's like a roller coaster on ice skates, dude. It's crazy. The volatility will stress you out, but you don't look at it. You get in at a price you want. Don't try to time the market.
Here's my thoughts. I think I've convinced myself the future eventually is primarily driven off Bitcoin. If you believe that and you have the time to invest however much into it, it will return huge. What you can't do is put it in there and expect to pull it out anytime soon.
Yeah.
You got to be able to sit it in there and just let it cook.
Time in the market over timing the market.
Yeah.
I think that's the misconception most people have is like, I'm just going to wait to buy it. It's like, no, you just got to say X amount each month and you got to put it in there. That's what
I've been thinking about using like one of those apps that like round up the near cents and just because what's the money app, the Cash App has been advertising on TV. Like you can now roll those cents into Bitcoin. They now have that option.
Yeah, I think if I just set X number of dollars to auto pay into investment, and the thing is once you set that X amount, like you then have to budget around it, right? So you're forcing yourself into budgeting around it rather than creating a budget and then creating your investment portfolio around your budget, because you're never going to find money to invest if you're going to spend your money first.
Yeah. Also, one thing that's on my mind is that, with Michael Saylor being the guy that he is, what is he going to do once he accumulates 1 million Bitcoin? Is he going to hold them, or is he going to try to be innovative and develop the market into something else? That's what's on my mind, Conley.
What do you think? Which one does he do?
He's such an innovative guy, and you hear him talk in these podcasts about evolution and how things change so fast in society, and I can't see him holding these 1 million Bitcoin shares and just letting them sit there, not doing anything with them.
What do you think?
He's going to become like the future bank, and not like in the bank that we think of, but if he has, what does he have, like 3% of all Bitcoin now? It's something crazy.
I think it's like 2, but still, yeah, it's a lot of freaking Bitcoin.
If the world's value, like if most of the world's value switches over to Bitcoin, he would have 1-2% of the world's store value.
Yeah,
I think you immediately become a lender at that point, right?
Yeah,
an investor, a lender, that type of thing.
Yeah. Also, if Bitcoin adopts the market cap of gold, which it very easily could one of these days, sooner than not than later, I think the value of Bitcoin would be around like $400,000 a share.
Yeah.
What do you? Here's interesting. Any thoughts on Satoshi's wallet?
I think it was Lynn Sassman, and I think he's dead.
Wow, that'd be good.
I haven't ever been curious enough to dig into it. I would just be worried about how much he has.
That's my biggest worry. He has about 1 million Bitcoin, or the Satoshi wallet has about 1 million Bitcoin. That's 3x.
5%.
It'd be 9% or 6% because that's 3x what MicroStrategies has right now. So if MicroStrategies has 2%, that would be 6%. I guess it's not a high percent. I always thought it was way higher. But
the critical percentage is 51, because 51 you can change the code.
Yeah.
So it's imperative. Like there is risk to Bitcoin too. That's one of them. Is the consolidation of Bitcoin.
Here's a question for you. I'm looking at the top 10% holders of Bitcoin. Where do you think the U.S. government ranks in the top 10? If they're in the top 10?
Around 5, top 5 maybe.
I'd say they're in the top 20.
They are number 7 with 213,000 Bitcoin.
Just from stuff they've confiscated, right?
Yeah. Well, 70,000 of that is compensated from the Silk Road seizure, yeah. Which is I wouldn't have guessed they're that high. What do you think Chinese government is?
They're right behind them. They're 7.
U.S. government was 7.
They're 8.
What do you think, Manning?
I'm gonna go with 20.
They are 11 with 190,000. Not really that far behind.
Let's hear the list. Rattle them off.
Yeah.
Any guesses on number 1?
Satoshi.
Nope. It is Coinbase with 2.2 million Bitcoin, worth $202 billion. 10%.
10%?
I'm raising my hand.
Wow.
But those aren't their shares of Bitcoin. Those are their customer shares of
They're
Bitcoin.
in Coinbase wallets. They're in Coinbase
Coinbase owns them.
So
the customers. Go ahead.
Coinbase sells shares to Fidelity. They sell shares to other big brokers as well. So I think
Fidelity is
they
on
have
this
the
list.
coins. They have the password to the coins. When you have a Coinbase, if you have a Bitcoin if you have a Bitcoin in your Coinbase account, they owe you a Bitcoin. You don't have a Bitcoin.
That's how like Venmo and Cash App Coinbase, or that's how Venmo and Cash App are. You own the Bitcoin address, but it's stored in a Coinbase allows you access to that Bitcoin address.
Yeah, that's how I think it works too.
They have like they would technically have the information that you have to access that Bitcoin address, but it's stored in your wallet.
Is Fidelity and BlackRock on there, Conley?
Yep, we're gonna get to that.
All right.
Oh, come on. They're on there?
Yeah, so number 2.
I changed my mind. I'm out of Bitcoin.
Why?
I'm out.
If that tells you anything, it tells you that they're gonna be No,
they will win over time. BlackRock will beat you and me over time in seizing enough control of Bitcoin to fuck it over.
Do you know their CEO, Larry Fink's trying to tokenize the stock exchange?
Yeah, I saw that.
That's crazy.
And that's also like, if you remember the promise of the internet, it was a democratization of data. But now it all goes through Google and they can fuck with it if they want to, right? And so we have the same promise here with crypto. And I think eventually those middlemen find their way back in the middle. To say it nicely.
Hey, you got to join them, man. If you can't beat them, join them.
That's right. So
I will put an asterisk beside. So the chart I was looking at was 2024. I found a new chart that's 2025, and it has Coinbase at 1 million Bitcoin. So about half the other one had. But anyways, on this list, I'll go with the first list with 2024. Satoshi's number 2 with 960,000 Bitcoin. Binance is number 3 with 600,000, and BlackRock's number 4 with 350,000 Bitcoin, about the same as MicroStrategy. That's number 5.
Wow.
And then Grayscale is number 6. U.S. government. They are Grayscale. They're like a BlackRock. They're an investment.
Oh, okay.
They're the ones who had the first Bitcoin ETF.
Let me pause this and ask you a question real quick. These traditional financial guys that say you can't invest in MicroStrategies, they're going to look at the list of how many holdings of Bitcoin BlackRock and Grayscale have, and they're still going to deny the concept of crypto.
Yeah.
Who else is on the list?
We have number 8, or number 7 is U.S. government. Number 8 is Bitfinance, probably another
exchange
crypto wallet. And then OKX is number 9. Haven't heard of that. Kraken is another wallet. It's at 10. Chinese government's 11. Fidelity's 12 with 175,000 Bitcoin. Black One is 13. Robinhood is 14. Ubit.
So like So
Yeah.
I'm curious if you add up the BlackRock, the Grayscale, the Vanguard, the U.S. government, because we all know those are the same thing, and their ownerships of Coinbase, OKX, Kraken. What were the other ones?
Finance.
Binance, all the exchanges, because they probably own 10% of each of those, right? That's their game, 10 to 30% of every company. How much of Bitcoin do they own?
I don't think you get above 10%. Maybe you do. Maybe you get to 20%.
Says something.
Scary.
Yeah.
So
That's
after
why you
hearing
gotta
all this,
invest. Take the percentage down.
Well, I mean, even like the dollar, I hate the dollar. I hate that the government messes with the dollar. But at least the dollar is ultimately controlled by a democracy that my opinion matters on a little bit.
So
But if the store value goes completely private and it's not democratized across the blockchain and all the ownership, which is the promise, but instead consolidated under a private company, that's worse.
so I guess my question is, if say it does end up like the U.S. government or whatever has like 30%, they have to spend it though. It's not like they can print money. So at some point they have to go down in the percentage of Bitcoin they hold, right? Because they have to spend it and it has to go back into the market.
Yeah, if they're at a deficit, they would have to at least lend out its equity. But
Because I think that's the
there's always
difference,
the
right?
Fed to allow them to borrow money.
Yeah.
I don't know. It definitely like it'll lose the government will lose its ability to pay for things via inflation. But I would rather the government be stealing 5% from me every year than BlackRock owning store value.
after looking into all this stuff, guys, for the listeners, how are you capitalizing on this evolving market right now? Do you have a plan?
Me?
Both of you guys. I think to Sterling's point there, even if you are worried about BlackRock and the government controlling Bitcoin, you still want to bet on the winning horse, whether it's for good or for bad, right? So if you think that, hey, this is something that they're going to control and run with, and it's going to be a worse outcome, but you could still capitalize on the bull run, like I think that's where you place your bet if you think that they're going to be able to create more of a monopoly with Bitcoin.
Right, but are you doing it?
I'm not. So my strategy right now is I have my 401k and traditional financial investments, right? It's safe.
Yep.
I have about 5 grand I put into Bitcoin as my risky bet in 2022, and I'm not touching it ever. Right. So that's my exposure to Bitcoin. And then the rest of most of my available assets go into the house, and the rest go into better food for the kids, better education for the kids. They all go to the kids.
Yeah.
So most of my available capital go to my kids as the main investment.
Yeah.
If this is too far, let me know. But like, how do you plan on getting those kids through college?
Don't have
Or
a great plan right now.
do you plan on college?
I'm not convinced they're going to go.
You
I'm
think it's
not.
going to change? The landscape's
I'm
going to
not.
change.
If worst case, college is still a thing, and it's still extremely expensive. It hasn't changed at all, like, economically. And my kids don't get a scholarship, then yeah, we'd have to take out loans, which wouldn't be great, but I still would do it for my kids. But
I
I
don't
think
think
I could get the loans.
I don't think college is going anywhere.
I don't think it can stay the way it is.
They're gonna have
I
to
don't.
adapt. Yeah.
Right, but I think to adapt, you have to change dramatically. Right. Eventually, the government won't be able to foot the bill anymore to sponsor all these people at low risk. And even if they do, people are getting wiser, not taking out $100,000 to go get a liberal arts degree. So if that happens, if people really realize that, and that culturally changes, then your demand for college cuts in half, right? You're really only sending lawyers, doctors, and engineers, right? Degrees that have an ROI. If you do that, colleges have to cut their prices 80% because they would be begging to get students as opposed to denying them. And then I think AI changes all of education, like just permanently. And if AI doesn't make college dramatically cheaper, I would be very surprised. If not necessary at all. My main premise is white collar work goes away and you don't need a college degree anymore. But even if that's not true, I think it'll make it a lot cheaper with AI as a, aid in your education.
So they thought the internet was going to take away everybody's job, and it ended up creating more jobs. So I'm a firm believer, I'm optimistic that AI is going to take away jobs, but it's also going to create just as many new jobs as it takes away. That we may not know what the jobs are going to be, but I think it will.
I don't like that argument. The Industrial Revolution, the argument is the Industrial Revolution replaced all these jobs, but more popped up because that were white collar, right? But they absolutely destroyed the labor, like physical labor market, right? That's not there anymore. The farms don't have hundreds of people at it. It has one farmer with a combine, right? Maybe two, right? They used to have hundreds. I think the same thing happens to white collar. And if AI combines with robotics, it's game over.
Right,
I
Sterling.
think the amount of people employed is like 1%.
But to your point, now you have factories making the combines, and now you have supply chain getting the corn, getting the grain to where it needs to go. I mean, everything builds off of each other. There's more jobs created off of what you just explained, but it just wasn't in the same realm of work.
Intelligence jobs. In order for me to change my opinion on this, you'd have to convince me that there's another form of job outside of labor and intelligence. So, like, you go to creativity, you go to like that type of stuff. I think there'll be markets for like handcrafted human things based off of novelty, based off of emotional connection. But I think AI and robotics win everywhere else, even in my job.
I'm with Sterling on this. I think each of these revolutions or ages of like industrial revolution stuff, I think you get these new jobs, but you get less of the new jobs. So there are new jobs created, but they're at a lower rate because the new jobs that are created are these kind of higher level jobs that require less people working them, right? And I think we're just at the next level of that where you're going to have these new jobs, but there's going to be less of them, and it's going to be at a very higher rate of less jobs.
Okay. Sorry, Colin.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a counter to your education college theory, Sterling. So these robotics and this intelligence, it takes away a lot of the frontline low paying jobs, right? That nobody wants to do or needs to do anymore because robots are better at doing it, right? No, you don't think so? So you think there'll still be people flipping burgers and doing all these jobs nobody wants to do?
No, I think they get replaced too. But like, so you saw did you see the Google article where their AI is already beating medical diagnostics against doctors? I think doctors go away because all they do is memorize a bunch of medical crap. That's why they go to school for 7 years. Guess what? Computers are better at that. Lawyers go away, right? Because they can cite legal theory from every case ever. Attorneys go away, or accountants go away, because guess who's the best bean counter? Computers. Like, what I struggle to picture a job where humans will be better than AI, or in the extreme cases where a human with AI doesn't do what 100 humans used to do.
Where I was going with that was that it'll open opportunity for more higher level jobs.
Yes, but
If
at
you get
that lower rate.
Like what?
if you get rid of the operational jobs, right? Because robots are better at it, then you're going to have more allowance for investing into engineers with sophisticated comprehensive with like design and innovation, right? So if we get rid of all of our inspectors and all of our mechanics, we now have a lot more money to invest, okay? Because we're saving a lot of money. Now we can invest that money into hiring a crap ton of design engineers, structural engineers, and get better at that next tier, which will take us to the next level, which will require more education.
Sterling's not
Yeah, but
very.
you don't think engineers get replaced by AI?
Sterling, I get the AI thing, but they lack creativity to take engineering to the next level. AI is working off of the information that we currently have on the
So I
web.
think you're the promise that AI promises in the future is that it is going to do that, right? It is mimicking how humans learn. If you think about it at a human level, we have some bit of creativity, but all of our creativity is inspired by knowledge that of this world and creativity that other humans have like created, information, understandings other people have used their creativity to understand and create for themselves. But we learn from that. So what AI promises is it's going to like basically replicate what we do, and at some point, it's going to be able to be creative. That's the promise of AI.
Can I
I
show you
don't think.
something?
Yeah, sure.
I saw this the other week. I love it,
Mm-hmm.
but it also scares me. This is an AI designed rocket engine. So that's 3D printed. So what used to take an entire team of multidisciplinary engineers is now an AI designed and robot built rocket engine.
Can you play the video?
The videos are a little old. This was
Let's
like
just click
the
the
one
video.
they showed
Click that
last
video.
week. I wish it would go bigger. It goes to the freaking.
Yeah.
I don't know how
I've
to
seen the
zoom.
stuff, a lot of the structural design generated by AI, and there's a lot of very unique shapes that you wouldn't expect.
But that is probably basing off of current engineers' research and work that they've posted on the internet, right?
Um,
All
Yeah, I
this.
mean, it uses our understanding of physics, and it probably digested a lot of what current rocket design is, but it used that to create something we've never seen before.
So I feel like all of this is based off of human intelligence that we've put on the internet, right?
Uh-huh.
And I feel like if we completely stop doing that and we stop doing research projects and we stop doing these innovative studies and we stop uploading them to the internet, I don't know how it's going to get any smarter.
but isn't that just what humans do? Don't we innovate off other people's innovations? Like our whole knowledge base, everything we know, everything we learn in school is just learning what other people have found. That's what AI is going to do. And it just has to iterate off that one step at a time. That's what humans do.
But you were just talking about on the Knees Over Toes podcast about how that traditional way of thinking and what we learned in the books wasn't it. And artificial intelligence didn't figure out that that
That was
wasn't it.
more
This
that was
guy on
more
his
the
own.
fact of stagnant information. So with traditional learning, you have textbooks that do not incentivize new information or information changing and updating, because they're basically written in, kind of, you can say, written in stone, because they're a high overhead to update the information. Um, their profits, the professors are incentivized to say this textbook is 100% accurate and this is what we're going to learn from. And if they go off that, they're not incentivized to go off that, because how the way the profits for that textbook is set up. So when I was saying traditional information, um, or traditional education is wasn't set up properly, is because how stagnant the information was that people were learning from.
Right. But that's what our AI's got to learn, right? It's got this information that we've decided, hey, this is what's right, and this is what we're posting on all these, fancy websites. So if you take out the human innovation part of that, you're not going to have people like David, the knees over toes guy, coming out with these alternative methods to doing things, because AI is going to be based off of what's factual on the websites.
I think what he did with finding unique ways to develop your knee joint mobility and strength is what this AI did with the rocket. It looked at it
I don't
through
think
different
so.
lens and redesigned it.
So here's the deal. I'm doing homework assignments, Conley, and I'm looking for sources, right? Because I still have to source things, cite things, right? And I need something that's current, up to date. If we don't have journalists and people evolving the field of aviation and posting stuff on the internet, I wouldn't have anything to write about. You know what I mean?
Why
What would I
wouldn't
be learning off
AI?
of?
Why wouldn't the small iterations that AI finds? Why wouldn't they be able to post those documents and build on itself?
Because AI is working off of past knowledge that is on the internet. You know what I mean? I feel like you still need that human factor
Yes, but that's what
to.
humans do. All of our knowledge is based on past knowledge, and we iterate on that. So AI would do the same thing. It would make small iterations, learn small bits at a time, and do exactly what like, it's literally designed to do what humans do. I get what you say. Like, if the data set never changes, then yes, it won't keep innovating. But I think what AI promises, and it's scary, is that it will be able to create, therefore iterate on itself and iterate its own knowledge. And that's what all the worry is about AI. Is because that's when it becomes that perpetual knowledge machine, when it iterates its own data.
The AI we know today, I think, is limited by that frame of mind, Manning. I don't think it will stay that way forever. That's
agree.
part of the theory, right? The AI has
I
to
don't think
learn
we're
how to
there.
extrapolate.
Yeah, we're not there, but
Yeah.
I'm saying what it promises, what all the AI people say it's going towards, is that being able to iterate on itself, create new data, create new information that is accurate.
So I'm going up against two engineers on this argument. I love it. And I want to see who's right in 10 years. So do you think that's a good time frame to test this theory? 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, that's when Max goes to college.
Okay, so 10 years. 10 years, I'm saying there will still be doctors and lawyers, okay, and engineers.
I think you're right. I think in 10 years, college is dramatically different. And by that, just to clarify, I mean, it either I think it's much cheaper, right? On a percentage basis, right? I don't want to say it's cheaper with inflation that we have in front of us, but on a relative basis, it's going to be much cheaper. And it's just not going to look like it is today. Maybe there's like 5 schools that win. Maybe there's 5 schools that people still go to. I don't know exactly what, but it'll look dramatically different than it does today.
So Zuckerberg just came out on Rogan. I sent it to the clip to Sterling this week. He said by the end of 2025, their mid-level engineers will all be replaced by AI engineers.
What's the SoftBank? SoftBank announced they will not be hiring anyone next year. That's their strategy.
And
They're not going to hire anybody.
What I like to tell people is this is like the very first mobile phone that was the size of, it was huge, right? It was horrible.
It was a backpack.
And now we're at
a
iPhone.
suitcase.
Yeah. So you go from suitcase phone to iPhones. We're at the suitcase phone right now. And that's how I try to put it into perspective. I can't tell you how it's all going to develop out. I just know there's a lot of change, and we're just at the beginning of it.
I would say there's a case where the revolution produces new jobs that I've never thought of before.
Mm-hmm.
I just think this one's different.
Happen, but I think it's that lower rate, right? Like you're going to go from 20 jobs down to 1 job out of that.
I would love to come back on and talk about the gig economy. That's kind of where we're going with this.
That's interesting. Find a podcast. Come on back.
Yeah, man.
I haven't heard people talk about the gig economy for like 5 years.
That's what this is, right? This is evolving to the gig economy.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that happen in this future. Like if that pans out, right? Like I think there is that whole market of human created content. I think you find that human created jobs. Like there's going to be like, I would like to think that it kind of creates smaller communities that are more like just like human oriented small communities like towns and stuff like that. I think those become popular. It's really hard to predict, but it's fun to talk about.
Manning, here's what I would say to you is like pick 10 professions and then imagine in 10 years if robotics pans out, if AI pans out, that robot AI couldn't do it better than you or me or any average person.
I guess I just have more faith in humanity, not letting ourselves down to that extent, but I understand that it's finding cheaper, faster ways of doing things is how we evolve.
It's just the common
humanity has to figure it out.
Can't fight innovation.
Right, as Saylor explained in this podcast.
And you don't want to, because like if that is reality, and if I'm right about college, that means our kids don't have to go to college because they don't have to work. Right? There's abundance, and that's an optimistic version of the future. Now we have to go figure out what that means for society and culture and meaning and purpose But
well, they don't have to work because they won't have jobs because there won't be jobs. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. But I kind of look at it like this, like,
do you think that's optimistic?
Why do we go to gyms?
Because
why are gyms a new invention? Why didn't the guy 200 years ago go to a gym?
They didn't have the capacity to develop gyms for $10 a month like we do now.
They didn't need them.
Why didn't the guy in Rome go to a gym?
Because they didn't have the technology to build them.
They were in the fields. They were performing the actual labor. And then so we had this industrial revolution where now labor is no longer needed. And how do humans adapt? We make ourselves go, we pay to go perform labor to keep our bodies where they need to be. Right? I think it'll be the same thing for the mental side of the human experience. AI will replace it. And now there's going to be these gyms that you go and challenge your mind. Maybe you go pay to go do homework, which is wild, right? But I think that's how big a change AI is going to bring. It's going to have a society we don't recognize.
I mean, you know what's...
I like that.
And people probably can look at this conversation like these guys are they're talking about this silly stuff that's never going to apply. And like, they could relate it to like, they're talking about the world Wall-E lives in. But like, that world was created for the movie because of these ideas of like, hey, if all this stuff like actually ends up happening, this is the world we're going to be in. You know? It's going to be that Wall-E world, which is crazy.
We might be moving to Mars by then, Sterling, so there might be a new economy up there.
So
But
imagine,
we send Optimus.
no, dude,
We send
imagine
thousands of
robots and AI
Optimuses.
work. And yeah, and he just sends a bunch of these
That's
optimists
what
to
Musk
Mars
wants
and
to do.
says,
They don't have to
build me
eat.
a civilization."
They don't have to eat. They don't
Seriously.
need all that stored energy, extra stored energy on the starship. They can charge from sun when they get to Mars, so they can pack them in. They'll have 10x the amount of robots as you could fit humans. You have no risk. It's like that's where the future is going.
They're just
You
gonna
don't need
eliminate us, iRobot
astronauts
style.
to do it first. It is scary. I don't want to live in iRobot world, but
I don't know either.
it's where all the arrows are pointing.
Wow.
It's stuff is changing, and it's
Yeah.
changing fast. Conley and I are doing. We're going to do an episode in the future. Instead of sending each other TikToks like we have been, like because we'll talk about something and it'll show up on my TikTok because this freaking thing is listening to us right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll like want to send it to Conley, but we're our idea is we're going to save it. We're just going to spend an episode looking at all the TikToks we would have sent to each other, but
I like
gosh,
that idea.
I forgot where I was going with it, but like every week there is a new AI thing. Every week that I save for Conley,
I would
it's
like to
wild.
add. I would like to add. After we record Riverside, my content on my apps changes to what we talk about. So
Yeah,
either
it does.
either other apps are listening to my microphone or Riverside's just selling all the data, which it is a free service, so I'm sure they make money on
Oh,
that
yeah.
data.
Yeah.
And when you record on here, it saves it, and AI creates clips for like short form content and even for long term content. So it is storing that data and it's using that data in these AI models. So I would guarantee it's using this data to learn on too. And so it definitely is selling that data. I would bet that
It
it's
has to
selling
be because
data.
we never gave it our names. We didn't give it our phone numbers. So in order for it to advertise on our phone, on our social media, it had to
I think it
figure
gets
out.
your. I think they connect the device you're on to your other accounts.
Oh, okay.
I think
They
they have my
understand that this
device unique
laptop
ID.
is owned by
It's
Sterling Price.
and it has Instagram logged in. Yeah.
Dang.
Anyways, I think
All
we
right,
can wrap
let's wrap
there.
this up. So
Whoa.
how we end every episode is we do our takeaways, the things we want to take away with us. So Manning, you're the guest. You want to go first? Or you want to go last?
My key takeaway from this podcast and this conversation is that nobody can predict the future. Anything could happen. Literally, anything could happen.
Yeah.
Pick something you like, learn about it, dive into it, and invest into it. That's my key takeaway.
Yeah, I like that. Conley?
I think what I took away more from this discussion than the podcast was the vulnerability of Bitcoin to be controlled by not the people, not a decentralized network. And its one vulnerability is it being that 51% being captured by an entity. And I don't think it would be obvious. I think it would be all these subsidiaries of like BlackRock, Grayscale, and whatever government controls those or however that plays out. So I think it's the vulnerability of Bitcoin that I haven't really thought of or paid too much mind to.
Can you imagine like in the future where like US owns 10% and China owns 8 and these companies own the rest and they like make deals with each other like hey, if we partner, we get to 51% and we can take the Bitcoin from everyone else or we can
Monopoly.
print another 20 million or
Well,
this or that.
and that happens from the abundance of credit that everyone uses. It's that when you go to pay with your iPhone and it says, "Do you want to make payments on your McDonald's hamburger?" The people who are clicking yes, well, they don't own their Bitcoin anymore. It's lended out, and like if the average United States debt is 22,000 or 32,000 in credit card debt, well, that means that the decentralized the people aren't owning that money. People don't own their money already. So if the majority of people are lending money and are credited money, then that means that if the US dollar was exposed as like a decentralized network, that the people don't own it.
Yeah. Manning.
Manning was confused about that. The analogy of yeah.
I was confused.
So like if
No. I wasn't confused. I was mocking you.
All right, I'll do one. I had to. The one I really like was to be concise. I don't want to be the smart person that rambles. I don't like because I think a lot of Michael. I don't want Conley, Mr. Rambler. I don't want to be that smart person that no one wants to listen to.
yeah, you can be the auditor. I hope you have fun with that. I'll ramble.
Oh, an auditor of whether or not you ramble.
Yeah, you keep me in line.
Okay,
From
I'm
rambling.
sure I ramble too. The other one is like it's popping up a lot, but good things take time. I mean, MicroStrategies is one of the most valuable companies in the world, but it seems like they happened 2 years ago. Really, it's 20 years ago, and so it's like another reminder that to build great things takes a lot of time, and a lot of time where no one knows who you are, no one sees the hard work or the struggle. It's like this anonymous time before you make it. It's just it's a tax. It's like something you have to pay. So I want to take that with me too. Just remembering that.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks for joining, Manning. I think that's a wrap.
I had a great time.
Come on back.
I would love to.
All right.
All right.
Oh.